What is up, space birds? Welcome back to Airlocks and Aviaries. It's been a while since I've done another analysis video, and hey, you didn't think I was gonna let Pride Month slip past without doing an LGBT video, huh? Nah, we doing this. Today, we are going to be talking about Star Trek. Star Trek The Next Generation, specifically within the TV show universe. And we're going to be focusing on LGBT stuff, specifically two characters who I think have some really interesting metaphors, intentional or unintentional. Now, the YouTube channel Are They Gay has already covered Star Trek TOS, but what about TNG? There are no videos from them there, but I can assure you there is still some gay stuff. Now, while there's plenty of subtext in Starfleet The Next Generation other than this, today we're going to be focusing specifically on Lieutenant Commander Data Soong and Commander Geordie LaForge. Now, Data and Geordie, android and human, these two have had an extremely strong friendship that has been explored multiple times throughout the show. But what if it was something more than a friendship? There might have been some of you who look at this show and can't prevent yourself from seeing the subtext. There might be some of you who look at this show and never even considered it. But whatever the case, I'm going to do my job and look at this movie without assuming that every single character is straight. And ask the question, because the respective channel didn't deliver, are they gay? Well, sort of. Now, this video is going to be split up into two parts because I just have a lot to say. Part 2 is going to be focusing on their relationship with each other. Part 1 is going to be, this video, is going to be more exploring about the characters' individual sexualities. So, without further ado, let's get into the video. I'm going to start off with Data, my favorite character from The Next Generation. Now, as we all know, because he's had to explain it to everyone so many times,
I am an android.
Data is an android, and he also insists that he cannot feel emotions because he claims it wasn't programmed into him without the chip thingy. However, I believe that that's not true. I think it's a bit like Geordie's visor in an odd way. Now, Geordie wasn't born with the ability to see the way that we normally do, like how Data wasn't given an emotions chip that would stimulate what we would experience as feelings when he was created. But like Geordie's sight, Data found a way to achieve this in his own special way, even though it's not what we'd normally think of as feelings. Just because Deanna can't sense them doesn't mean that they don't exist. Now, I'm going to try and explain in this section why I believe Data has emotions, because I think it's important to the evidence. Now, I'm not saying that Data has to have emotions to be in a relationship with Geordie. I'm not trying to be androidist here, whatever, but it's going to be easier to prove that Data has feelings for Geordie if we prove that he has feelings first. Now, I know it's been emphasized over and over again in this series that Data doesn't feel emotions. They'd also tried to prove it in multiple episodes by, giving him emotions and having him go crazy, like the human version of emotions. And just, they've been begging us to accept, basically, that the fact that Data is emotionless because he doesn't have a little computer chip. But I'm not going down that easy, okay? And I came with evidence. Now, we're going to break down some of Data's decisions and responses to prove that they're emotion-based. Let's take a look at Data's quarters, shall we? Data is an artist, okay? He plays multiple instruments, specifically the violin. He paints, and he studies and performs theater. He also reads books. They claim in the show that he does these things because he doesn't have emotions, so he can express himself with them. But in a way, you need to sort of have some responses and feelings to do all of these things. Data plays the violin more than any other instrument that he could easily learn how to play, and shows interest in the Sherlock book series more than any other book. Do you know what these are? That's right, my friends, they are preferences. Data prefers these things. Now, what is a preference? It's something that you would rather experience over other things because that specific thing brings you more enjoyment than other activities. Enjoyment, happiness, which I believe is an emotion. Data has feelings because he has preferences. Let's look at a hypothetical. Let's say that Data was a truly emotionless being, like a computer. If he didn't have emotions, he wouldn't have joy in specific things over others, meaning it would be of no consequence to him of how he decorates his quarters. It would be pointless for him to learn a specific instrument over other instruments because there would be no specific reason to choose that one. He wouldn't read Sherlock over and over again because he would gain no enjoyment from it one way or another. He would just be a blank slate with no interest because in order to have interests, you need to have enjoyment. I still don't see why they can continue to insist that Data can't feel without his chip. An emotionless being having preferences would be like your computer wanting to have a specific background because it doesn't like the one you selected, or your Amazon Echo deciding to be in a certain part of your house because it matches the aesthetic. And speaking of, Data is very committed to the aesthetic.
The ambient light in this location accentuates its contours.
Yes, Data does research on what he thinks humans think look good, but he has his very own specific set of interests that don't directly copy anyone, and I believe that requires emotions. Picard even talks about this in the episode The Ensigns of Command.
Is there nothing of Data in what I'm hearing? You see, you chose the violinist. Heifetz and Bronken have radically different styles, different techniques, and yet you combined them successfully.
I suppose I have learned to be creative, sir, when necessary.
What he fails to mention here, however, is that Data's own ideas, Data's own, creativity and self are based on his own preferences, which are based on emotions. If that's not enough proof for you, let's talk about Data's having friends. He has a strong bond with the rest of the crew and he cares about them very much. Now, Data explained before what it means for him to have friends and to be friends with people in the episode Legacy.
Are you able to have friends?
Yes.
But you don't have feelings, do you?
Not as such. However, even among humans, friendship is sometimes less an emotional response and more a sense of familiarity.
So you can become used to someone.
Exactly. As I experience certain sensory input patterns, my mental pathways become accustomed to them. The input is eventually anticipated and even missed when absent.
Once again, this skims the surface, but we really need to dive in deeper with this. This makes me laugh, actually, because it was supposed to be an explanation of how somebody could have friends without having emotions, but it sort of proved he had emotions instead. Like, wait, what is missing somebody or something? What does that mean exactly? Well, in order to miss something, one must experience joy while it is around, and this absence of the thing providing the joy must create sadness. Therefore, we can conclude that whatever the heck is in his brain causing him to become used to things is giving him some sort of a reward. And just like when he tries certain things over others, Data has a reward center in his brain, which is something similar to, but not the same as, probably what we have in our brains. So, Data can have specific preferences for specific things over others, as we saw with the violin example. He can also become attached to people by becoming used to them and gaining joy from their presence after a while. Therefore, we can conclude that Data can form specific bonds with specific people. His friendship with Geordi and the rest of the crew actually means something and isn't a product of happenstance and Data's programming becoming accustomed. He can have real relationships. The question is now, can Data have romantic relationships? Because being able to have love for friends doesn't necessarily mean somebody has love for people romantically. There is a possibility that Data is asexual or aromantic or both. But my personal interpretation of this series is that Data can have romantic attraction, specifically for people of the same gender as him. That's right, I think Data is gay, and it's not just because he's into Shakespeare and owns a cat and dresses like this. Yeah! At least, not entirely. Now, let's look back. Data has multiple relationships with women throughout the show, but it's not exactly like they were loving partnerships. Let's look at Data's reaction while being kissed by women, shall we?
What were you just thinking?
In that particular moment, I was reconfiguring the warp field parameters, analyzing the collected works of Charles Dickens, calculating the maximum pressure I could safely apply to your lips, considering a new food supplement, the spot.
saying, oh, it's because Data can't feel romantic attraction, but to that I say, let's back up a second. Let's go to a scene from the episode Inheritance.
Your father would be so pleased.
Pleased.
Well, he was worried that the sexuality program he designed for you wouldn't work.
This woman helped program Data. He has a sexuality program, and this is confirmed. Data has a sexuality, but he's not attracted to women. Let's look at this other episode, The Perfect Mate. This is actually my least favorite episode because it condones sex slavery, but we're looking at it because it has some solid proof in it. When Picard is talking to that human trafficker, this conversation ensues.
The height of her sexual allure, Captain. Every man on the ship will be fighting over her.
Not every man.
Okay, that in and of itself has some serious connotations to it. I mean, dang. There's this straight man's sex fantasy walking around on the Enterprise who is actively trying to seduce everyone. We're ignoring the problematic implications of that. But anyway, Data is standing there with absolutely zero romantic interest.
Why don't we find out what else we have in common?
Extremely rude behavior.
Mr. Data's protecting me tonight.
Protecting you from what?
I just want to have a good time like anybody else.
Come on down to deck 7. We'll show you a good time. Get rid of the android. We'll have some fun.
He doesn't desire this woman, or any woman for that matter, romantically or sexually, because he's not attracted to women. But again, he does have a sexuality, so he has a sexuality, and he's not attracted to women at all. Let's face it, the only thing straight about this android is his hair. Anyway, this isn't the only proof that I have. Let's visit the episode in theory. Aside from the all-around gayness of this scene,
I bumped into Jeff again in the turbo lift this morning. He asked me out to dinner.
I will now remind you of the reasons you decided to end your relationship with Jeff.
this episode is pretty cringy, but it does come with a lot of evidence. If you recall, in this episode, this ensign Jenna has a crush on Data and tries to pursue a romantic relationship with him. Data decides to humor this and plays along. But to do this, he creates a specific program separately for romantic relationships.
This is all part of a program?
Yes, one which I have just created for romantic relationships.
I know romantic relationships and platonic relationships are way different, but they're also similar in some senses. They require love and respect and communication and commitment. As we know, Data is very capable of having platonic relationships. He has many. You'd think he'd see a romantic relationship as just another step from friendship, but no. Data had to go and make a whole separate program in his brain in order to be in a relationship with this woman. And this program did some pretty dang weird things to him.
May I get you a drink, dear?
That's sort of the joke and the cringe of this episode, and that's the reason why Jenna broke up with him. I think it was intended to be funny, but I'm going to read into it a little bit further, because that's what I'm here for, right? Anyway, Data has to basically change his entire personality to be in a relationship with a girl. When he was with her, his romance program was on, changing everything about what was in him, his mannerisms, his interests, his identity. Data has the ability to be romantically attracted to people. But in order to give Jenna what she wanted, a straight relationship, he needed to make a program that overrode his sexuality program and his identity. As we know, Data appearing straight was not a great look for him.
There's something so forced and artificial about the way you're doing it, Data. It's just not the real you.
Because it's not him. It's him pretending to be something that he's not, which is straight.
With regard to romantic relationships, there is no real me.
Now, why would he want to do a thing like that if he's gay, you might ask? Well, I hate to break it to you, my hetero friend, but that's kind of part of the whole LGBT experience. Society tells us we need to be a certain way to fit in, so we do, and we squash whatever's inside us that stands out in order to feel like we belong. And as we know, Data wants more than anything to fit in with the rest of the humans and the straights, so it makes sense that he would erase his identity to seem more like a normal human, or what society standards would dictate would be normal. I only wish he knew that what he is doesn't make him stand out. It makes him even more human. Now, hold your horses, you might be thinking. This is a lot of evidence provided as to why Data doesn't like girls. We get it, he's not interested. But there's not a lot of evidence proving that he wants to pursue a romantic relationship with anyone else, other than his mom's off comment about the sexuality program. He could have no interest in anyone at all, not even people of the same gender. Well, I still doubt that. Let's go into the episode Data's Day. Great episode, by the way. Very wholesome. There's this little scene in the episode where he and Deanna are discussing the wedding that's happening, and Data tells Deanna this.
Although I am an android, I have not excluded the possibility that I too may someday marry.
You heard it here first, folks. Data does want to pursue a romantic and possibly sexual relationship, but we can't be sure. We've seen his lack of interest in women, so it's clearly that's not what he's attracted to. So preferably, someone who doesn't identify as female, someone who he can be himself around and doesn't have to write a fake program to pretend, someone whom he shares interests and experience, someone whom he cares about more than anything else in the galaxy. Who else but Commander Geordie LaForge? After we're done admiring that transition, let's take a look at Geordie's relationships to see and try and explore his sexuality. Now, as we've seen throughout the show, Geordie has quite a few relationships, none of which really worked out too well. Yes, they were all with women, and unlike Data, he actually did have feelings for quite a few of them, despite being unrequited, but that doesn't mean that he's straight. There are more than two sexualities, everyone! Hi, yes, and I believe that Geordie is pansexual. Let's present some of the evidence to back up that interpretation aside from everything that is going on with him and Data, which is pretty obvious. But anyway, let's start by looking at everyone Geordie's been attracted to. I'm specifically reminded of the episodes Aquiel and Booby Trap. In Aquiel, Geordie is investigating murders on a space station and is going through the logs of this officer who is presumed dead. He gets feelings for this woman after watching her personal logs for so long, and once they actually meet, then they get together for a brief time. He falls for this officer after getting to know her very well from her videos. It's not the best episode, but it is what it is. In another episode, Booby Trap, Geordie falls for a holographic program simulating the engineer who designed the engines of the Enterprise. He gets to know this computer simulation of Dr. Leigh Brahms after working with her through a perilous situation, and he gets feelings for her in the end as they work to get the ship out of a serious problem. Of course, in a later episode, Galaxy's Child, Dr. Brahms actually shows up and is actually very upset about all this. I don't particularly like either of the episodes because they made the engineer who designed the Enterprise a woman just to turn right around and make her an object of desire. Anyway, they connect with Geordie's other romantic episode in that they have something in common. Geordie always falls in love with people when he gets to know them. It doesn't matter who they are and who they identify themselves as, even if they're a hologram. If he feels like he's bonded with them, he gets feelings for them once he knows their personality. This isn't to say he's asexual. Again, it's clear he can have those feelings from what we've seen. But Geordie always seems to favor personality over initial presentation of identity. The sort of motto of pansexual and panromantic people is hearts, not parts. Geordie gets to know people's hearts and seems to place this of more importance than their parts. But wait! Everyone Geordie's ever dated was a woman. What makes you so sure that he's not just straight and focused on girls' personalities? Well, it's true that Geordie has never shown any interest in anyone who's not a woman, other than Data. I have one more piece of evidence. I'm sure we've all forgotten about the episode Heart of Glory, since it was in season 1. Also, it was a Klingon episode and didn't really have anything to do with Geordie and Data. But it did have one important scene about Geordie's visor. In this episode, we actually got to see Geordie Vision and what the world looks like with his visual aids. He can see the world in a different way than other people would consider seeing. And as we can tell from the episode, everything looks very different to Geordie.
Geordie, what's that? Over to the left.
What?
Yes, that. No, back. Yes, that, right there. What is that?
That's Commander Riker.
Ah, to me it's just an undefined form standing in a visual frenzy.
People become shapes. He can't discern things in the same way that we do. So he looks at people and perceives them based on what he knows about them. And with his other senses, because he doesn't see their outward appearance in the same way that we do. Which makes sense why people's inner personalities are very important to Geordie, because it's how he sees everyone. This could be compared to pansexuality. Pansexual people say that they sort of don't see gender, or that gender identities aren't very important to them. Put on Geordie's visor, and gender identities don't matter. What matters is what's inside, because everyone looks sort of the same on the outside. Except for one person, Data. Another interesting tidbit in this episode is we found out how Geordie sees Data.
Look over at Data. There's an aura around him.
Well, of course, he's an android.
But you say that as if you think that's what we all see.
Don't you?
To him, all androids and synthetic life forms put off a sort of glow. This is very metaphorical as well, as Data is one of the only androids to exist. To Geordie, Data stands out more than anything else because he's the most important to him. Okay, that is it for part 1, everyone. Join in next time while I will be talking about Data's relationship to Geordie and how they feel about each other. This was an exploration of their sexualities. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you next time.